He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "This baby isn't mine." And in that moment, something in me broke forever. My name is Natalie. I'm 36 years old. And this is the story of how I was thrown out of my own home while 5 months pregnant and how I found my way back to myself. When I look back, I can almost pinpoint the exact second I stopped recognizing the man I married. It wasn't a loud moment. It wasn't screaming or slamming doors. It was that one sentence, delivered cold as stone over dinner. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Ethan and I had been together for 11 years. Married for 9. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party in Chicago. He spilled wine on my jeans and spent the whole night apologizing and making me laugh. I remember thinking, this guy feels like home. At first, he was all about little surprises, leaving notes in my lunch bag, texting me in the middle of meetings with "I miss you already." You know how it is at the beginning, when love feels like a movie. But life isn't a movie, is it? The cracks started small. Him getting snappy when I asked about his day. Staying late at work. Forgetting to call when he traveled. I used to sit on the couch with dinner getting cold beside me, checking the clock every 5 minutes, trying not to text first. And every time he came home with some excuse and a tired kiss, I'd forgive. Because I wanted us to work. Because I was scared of what falling apart looked like. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified, but hopeful. I bought the test from the Walgreens near my office and took it in the second-floor bathroom during my break. I waited on that cold tile floor, staring at the tiny screen like it could change my life, and it did. I smiled all the way home. I picked up takeout from his favorite Thai place, green curry with shrimp, and even stopped at Target to grab a baby onesie that said, "Coming soon." I had it all planned. I'd surprise him after dinner. Maybe he'd cry. Maybe we'd hold each other and feel that spark again. But when I told him, he just stared. I said it softly, "Ethan. I'm pregnant." He blinked. "You're what?" "I'm 5 weeks. I found out today." And then it came, that awful sentence. "Are you sure it's mine?" I actually laughed. I thought he was being sarcastic. But then I looked at his face, flat, cold, distant. And something in my chest just tightened. "I can't believe you just said that," I whispered. "Ethan, how could you even think?" He stood up from the table, didn't touch his food. "I'm not doing this right now," he said, and walked away. I sat there, staring at the uneaten curry, that little onesie still in the shopping bag beside me. My hands were shaking. Maybe I should have left right then. Maybe that was the sign I needed. But I didn't. Because deep down, I still believed I could fix this. God, I was so naive. The next morning, I woke up alone. The side of the bed where Ethan usually slept was cold, untouched. I found him downstairs on the couch, scrolling on his phone like the night before had never happened. I stood there, hand on my stomach, heart in my throat. He didn't look up. Just said, "There's cereal if you're hungry." Seriously? That was it? I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. But I didn't. I just nodded, went into the kitchen, and poured myself some cereal, dry, because we were out of milk and, honestly, I didn't have the energy to care. I sat at the kitchen table in silence, watching the sun pour through the window, warming up the empty chair across from me. I remember thinking, is this how my child's life is going to begin? In silence, in coldness, in doubt? Over the next few days, Ethan barely spoke to me. No questions about doctor appointments. No late-night talks about names. Nothing. It felt like I was invisible in my own home. I tried bringing it up once, asked him if he wanted to come to the next ultrasound. He muttered something about being too busy with work. Then he looked at me and said, "You don't actually expect me to play happy family until we know for sure, do you?" I couldn't breathe. "For sure?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair. "I mean, people lie, Natalie. It happens. People lie." My own husband, my partner of over a decade, was accusing me of lying about the one thing that should have brought us closer than ever. But you know what the worst part was? I started questioning myself. I started wondering if maybe I had done something wrong. If maybe I'd been too emotional lately. Too clingy. Too something. Isn't that what happens, though? When someone you love slowly chips away at your confidence, you stop trusting your own instincts. And here's a question for you. Have you ever felt that sick, sinking feeling in your gut when the person you love the most looks at you like a stranger? Because that's what it felt like. Every single day. I told my friend Jenna about it over lunch one day. We were at a Panera, and I was poking at my salad while she listened, wide-eyed. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Natalie, this isn't okay." I shook my head. "He thinks I cheated, Jenna. He really believes it." "Did you?" "What?" "No. Then don't let him gaslight you into thinking you did." Gaslight. That word hit me hard. Because deep down, I knew she was right. But it's easier to defend someone else's bad behavior than to admit your life is falling apart, isn't it? And so, I stayed. I kept hoping he'd come around. That he'd hold my belly and smile like he used to. But I should have known. That man was gone. And the one who'd replaced him, he was about to do something even worse. A few days later, I came home from work and found Ethan in the garage. He was sitting on a folding chair, staring into space, a half-empty beer in his hand. I hesitated. "Hey, you okay?" He glanced up, then looked away just as quickly. "You should have told me the truth from the start." There it was again. That same quiet accusation that had been hanging in the air for weeks, poisoning everything. I walked over slowly. "Ethan, I don't know how many times I have to say this. I didn't cheat on you. This baby is yours." He scoffed. "You say that, but I see the way you flinch when I touch you. Like you're hiding something." I felt my stomach twist. "I flinch because you've been cold, distant, and angry since the second I told you. What do you expect me to do? Pretend everything's fine?" He didn't respond. Instead, he just got up, muttered something about going out, and left. The garage door slammed shut behind him. I stood there in the silence that followed, my hands trembling. This wasn't just moodiness or stress anymore. This was emotional abandonment. And it was getting worse. Later that night, I found something that made everything spiral even further. I was doing laundry, digging through his hamper when I found a receipt, 2 dinners at a fancy restaurant across town. Candlelight level fancy. Our anniversary wasn't for months, and he never took clients out. And the worst part? There was lipstick on the napkin tucked into the receipt. It wasn't mine. I just sat there on the floor, holding that stupid little square of paper, blinking back tears. He didn't believe I was faithful while he was out, what, dating? Or more. I wanted to confront him right there. But I didn't. I waited. When he got home, hours later, I asked him calmly, "Where were you tonight?" He shrugged. "Out." "With who?" "Just friends." I pulled out the receipt, held it up. "This friend wear red lipstick and order $60 filet mignon?" He went still. Then, without even blinking, he said, "Maybe you should have kept your nose out of my stuff." That was it. No apology. No denial. Just that. And for a moment, just one, I felt crazy. Like maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was making something out of nothing. But no. I knew what I saw. You ever have that moment? Where you realize you're not the paranoid one, you're just finally seeing things clearly. That was me. Sitting in a pile of laundry, holding a receipt like it was a death certificate for my marriage. I went to bed that night, but didn't sleep. My hand rested on my belly the whole time, and I kept thinking, what kind of father is this man going to be? And the answer, no matter how hard I tried to avoid it, was already screaming in my head. Not the kind I want around my child. Not even close. The next morning, I called in sick. I couldn't face work, not after the night I had. I just wanted to breathe, to think. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, still in my pajamas, wrapped in an old sweatshirt my mom gave me years ago. The one with the frayed cuffs and coffee stains I never managed to scrub out. Funny how comfort can live in the ugliest things. I stared at the street for what felt like an hour. And when I finally blinked back into reality, my neighbor, Mrs. Atkins, was standing at the edge of her lawn, watering her roses. She waved. I waved back, pretending I hadn't just spent the morning spiraling in silence. Later that day, I went into the guest room, where Ethan had been sleeping for the past few nights. I wasn't even sure when he started doing that. One night he said he needed space. The next, it just became the norm. His side of the closet was nearly empty. Drawers, too. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just pulling away. He was preparing to leave. quietly, carefully, like a man sneaking out of his own life. I stood there, heart racing, as I opened the bottom drawer, where he kept old cards and letters. A few were still there. I found one I'd written him on our 5th anniversary. I'd drawn little hearts all around his name. Back then, I believed we could survive anything. Now, I didn't even recognize the version of me who wrote that letter. When Ethan came home that night, I was ready. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just asked, "Are you leaving me?" He blinked. "What?" "You've packed half your stuff. You sleep in another room. You lie to my face. Are you planning to leave?" His face tightened. He rubbed his jaw like he always did when he was cornered. "I don't know what you want me to say." "The truth," I said. "That's all I've ever wanted." He sat down at the edge of the couch. "You're having a baby. I should be happy. I know. But I'm not. I'm angry, Vanessa. And I don't even know why. Maybe it's because you still have a future and I feel like mine is gone." That stunned me. Because for the first time in weeks, it didn't sound like blame. It sounded like pain. I sat across from him, arms folded tightly. "Then talk to me. Be honest. Let's fix this, if there's anything left to fix." But instead of answering, he just looked away and muttered, "Maybe you should go stay with your mom for a while." And that was the moment. The final shove. I packed a bag that night. Just a duffel. Essentials. Toothbrush. A few clothes. My ultrasound picture. And the little plush elephant I'd bought at Target the day I found out I was pregnant. I drove to my mother's place just after midnight. The roads were quiet. I remember passing the gas station where Ethan used to meet me after late shifts when we first started dating. Back then, we couldn't bear to spend a single night apart. Now he couldn't wait to push me out the door. When I finally pulled into Mom's driveway, she opened the door before I even knocked. She didn't ask questions. She just hugged me. Tight. Like she knew I'd been breaking in pieces I hadn't even told her about. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself cry. There was something oddly comforting about the sound of my mom clinking around in the kitchen. The soft whir of her ancient coffee grinder. The way she hummed old Stevie Nicks songs under her breath. I lay there on the pull-out couch, blanket tucked up to my chin, just listening. For a moment, I didn't feel like a grown woman whose life was falling apart. I felt like a kid again, safe, small, invisible to the chaos. Eventually, I dragged myself up. My back was stiff from the terrible mattress, but Mom had already made scrambled eggs and toast. She even cut the crusts off, like she used to when I was little. I don't know what it is about mothers, but they seem to know when you need comfort without asking. We didn't talk much at first. Just sipped our coffee and watched the light spill in through the curtains. But then she said, quietly, "You don't have to tell me what happened, Vanessa. Just, whatever it is, you're not alone." And God, I wanted to believe that. I nodded, eyes burning, and finally whispered, "He told me to leave." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't say, "I told you he was no good," or "You should have seen it coming." She just reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm so tired, Mom," I said. Like, in my bones tired. And I can't tell if it's the pregnancy or just carrying everything by myself. She didn't answer right away. She just stood, pulled something from the pantry, and handed it to me. A worn old recipe box. "Sometimes," she said, "when your father was being impossible and you were a baby, I'd cook. I'd make things I couldn't afford to eat. It gave me something small to control." I opened the box and flipped through the index cards, some of them yellowed and curling at the edges. Pot roast. Peach cobbler. Chicken and dumplings. I smiled, despite myself. That afternoon, I drove to the nearest grocery store, an old neighborhood place, not some shiny mega market. I walked those aisles like a woman on a mission. Flour, onions, fresh thyme. A half-dozen things I hadn't bought in years. I think I just needed to feel capable again. That night, Mom and I sat at the kitchen table with full plates and second helpings. It wasn't about the food. It was about claiming something back. A ritual. A memory. A sense of me. And somewhere between the bites and the quiet, I said it out loud for the first time. "I don't think Ethan's coming back." Mom paused mid-chew. "Do you want him to?" I didn't answer right away. I stared down at my plate like it might contain the truth. I wanted the version of him I thought I married, I said. But this man? This man who tells me I'm too much, who makes me feel like I've stolen something from him just by existing, no. I don't want him. She nodded slowly. Then maybe, sweetheart, this is the beginning. Not the end. I didn't know if she was right. But for the first time in a long while, that idea didn't terrify me. It gave me hope. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, listening to the creaks in the old house, the ticking of the kitchen clock down the hall, the distant sound of cars passing on the wet pavement. My hands kept resting on my belly absently, protectively. I whispered to the baby, I don't know what our life will look like, but I swear I'll make it safe for you. And just like that, I started crying. Not pretty, delicate tears. I'm talking full-body sobs. The kind where you can't breathe and your face twists up and you make noises you don't recognize. It wasn't just about Ethan. It was everything. All the pressure I'd bottled up. The fear, the shame, the guilt of bringing a child into this storm. I think every woman has a breaking point. That edge where your heart just can't stretch any further. Have you ever hit that wall? The one where your only option is to either fall apart or fight like hell. The next morning, Mom found me on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, clutching a lukewarm mug of tea. She sat down beside me without a word, just pulled the blanket over her lap too. Eventually, I told her everything. The fights, the silence, the blame. How Ethan looked at me like I was the enemy just because I dared to succeed. How I begged him to go to counseling, to talk, to try. Mom didn't interrupt once. She let me spill it all out. And when I was done, she said, he doesn't hate you, Vanessa. He hates himself. But he'd rather punish you than face that. Those words sat heavy in my chest. Because deep down, I knew she was right. Later that day, I got a text from Ethan. Hope you're happy now. I told my mother everything. She says you've always been selfish. That was it. No apology. No, how's the baby? Just more venom. More projection. And the worst part? For a second, it worked. I felt ashamed. Like I'd failed some secret test of womanhood by not keeping my family together. But then I remembered something my therapist once said, back when Ethan and I first hit trouble. Sometimes, keeping the peace means letting go of the war. I stared at that text, read it 3 more times, then deleted it. No reply. No defense. Just silence. And in that silence, something shifted. It was the first time I didn't feel like I owed him anything. Not my attention. Not my guilt. Not my energy. Not anymore. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever held on so tight to something broken, just because letting go felt like failing? I think a lot of us do. But maybe, just maybe, walking away isn't weakness. Maybe it's the first real act of strength. 2 weeks passed. And in that short span of time, everything shifted. It didn't happen with some grand, dramatic moment. No light breaking through the clouds. No inspirational music. Just slow, steady changes. Like breathing after holding it too long. I started waking up before sunrise, not because I had to, but because I wanted those quiet minutes alone. I'd wrap myself in Dad's old flannel robe, waddle to the kitchen, and make tea. Mint with honey. I'd sit at the table and watch the sky turn orange behind the trees. Funny how peaceful the world looks when you're no longer afraid of what might happen next. Mom and I settled into a rhythm, too. She stopped tiptoeing around me, and I stopped pretending I was fine. We talked. Really talked. About her marriage. About mine. About the things women sacrifice and the parts of ourselves we forget to hold on to. One afternoon, while folding laundry, she looked at me and said, "You know, I used to think staying was brave. But maybe it's braver to leave before you disappear." That sentence hit me like a punch to the chest. Because that's what it had felt like I was disappearing in that house with Ethan. My voice. My confidence. My spark. He didn't take it all at once. He wore it down, one bitter word at a time. But now, I was coming back. I started reading again. I pulled out my old copy of The Bell Jar and underlined sentences I'd forgotten meant so much. I called friends I hadn't spoken to in months. I even let Lauren from HR convince me to join a virtual prenatal yoga class. And it felt good. Awkward, clumsy, but good. One night, while journaling, yeah, I journal now, can you believe that? I wrote. I am not what he said I was. I am not difficult. I am not cold. I am not too much. I am enough. I always have been. I reread that line 5 times. I don't think I'd ever written anything truer. A week later, I got a letter from Ethan. An actual letter. Not a text. Handwritten, front and back. He said he was sorry. That he'd messed up. That he was scared of being left behind. That watching me succeed made him feel small. He asked if I'd consider coming home before the baby came. And for the first time in forever, I didn't cry. I didn't rage either. I just folded the letter, placed it in the drawer, and stared out the window. Because here's the thing. I wasn't the same woman who left our house with a suitcase and a pounding heart. I was stronger, calmer, clearer. And for the first time in years, I had a choice. I wish I could tell you I marched into court with fierce red lipstick and a thunderous speech, like something out of a movie. But real life isn't like that. In reality, I sat across from Ethan in a small, gray mediation room, hands resting on my belly, heart thudding so loud I thought he could hear it. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said no. No, I'm not coming back. No, I'm not giving you another chance. No, I won't raise our child in a home where silence is used as punishment and love is conditional. He stared at me for a long time. Like he didn't recognize the woman sitting across from him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe the version of me he'd built his power on was finally gone. After that, it all moved faster than I expected. I filed for divorce. With Mom at my side. We talked custody. We set boundaries. I took a leave from work and started therapy, not just for the trauma, but for the years I spent trying to be smaller just to keep the peace. I gave birth to a baby girl on a rainy Tuesday morning. Her name is Eliza. Dark curls, fierce little lungs, and this gaze, like she sees right through you. And when I held her in my arms, I whispered, "You'll never have to shrink to fit into someone else's world. Not on my watch." The hospital room was quiet, just the sound of her breathing against my chest. And I remember thinking, this is what strength looks like. Not shouting, not slamming doors, but rebuilding, day by day, brick by brick. Now, we live in a small rental on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, but it's ours. There's a yellow armchair in the corner where I read to Eliza at night. A fridge full of leftovers I proudly made myself. And a front porch that catches the morning sun just right. The other day, I caught my reflection in the window. Hair tied up, spit up on my shoulder, eyes a little tired, but smiling. And I thought, I made it. Not without scars. Not without days where I wanted to give up. But I'm here. I'm whole. I'm more me than I've ever been. If you've walked through your own storms and came out stronger, or if you're still fighting, you're not alone. Subscribe to hear more stories from women like us, women who refuse to stay down. And hey, if this story moved you, if you believe more women deserve to hear voices like ours, don't forget to like this video. It helps these stories find the women who need them most.